It's really interesting to think about where we are right now. Not only from where we were when we started this podcast, but from where we were meeting each other. I mean, gosh, it's been like 30. When did we meet? 92? Because I think we're doing, I feel pretty decent. You know, there are times lately that I've almost been able to say, oh yeah, I'm a writer. You know what I mean? Because we talk about the imposter syndrome a little bit. And sometimes when I have an achievement, it feels, hey, yeah, I can do this. You know, and can I give a quick example if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
We've been talking about prompts this season, and prompts are such a great thing. We had Bethany Jarmel give us a little refill on prompts, and I've become such a big fan of them. Again, from the Smoke Long workshop that I started in March and have continued through, up until the end of August. And I didn't realize how much I love them. I didn't realize it. I thought, coming from the improv background, that, foolishly, that, getting something on prompts would be akin to, hey, everybody, what's something that you keep in your junk drawer that you can take to the beach? Just like that kind of prompt that you get from improv shows. But the wide range of prompts that you can have really, really, really helped me out. And so I was working on a piece the other day, and this is one that I have developed over the past, I think I would say, a month. And I was really having a problem with it. And then we've talked about the idea that I feel most comfortable writing a first draft. And then I sort of write out of that first draft, and I feel like I lose that initial spark that made my first draft so much fun to write. So I was really struggling. And then I realized 2 days ago, I found another prompt within the piece. So it's interesting to think of prompts as something that you start pieces with. But I was just walking around. I was just thinking about things, just having random thoughts. And something came out of the blue for me, and it sort of prompted me to take another look at my piece. And now I felt like, hey, I'm a writer. I worked through it.
And you are.
Just because of all that stressful work. Yeah.
No, I agree. I was looking back at the beginning of season 5, because sometimes I forget, where one season ends and the next one begins. This one picked up with you having come out fresh from that Smoke Long quarterly workshop. And so we talked a lot about writing workshops and then how to use deadlines to your advantage. And then we kind of scoped out that 9-step writing process, which surprised me, because when we were initially scoping out a writing process, it was much shorter. But it just kind of took into account that iteration, that looping that you need to do to kind of come back to refine and just codify that a little better. And I really appreciate that. So this has been a very successful season for me. I know you've actually gotten a ton published this season, but it's been really successful for me just to have that new view of the process and understand how iterative it is, and, just use that process correctly. And so I feel very good about it.
They always give us rules in improv, and then it's sort of like, no, you have to break the rules. It's that whole thing. Like, there are no rules, there are guidelines. And the 9-step process is something that definitely helps out, because it's like, I get so trapped in my head about like, what's not working? What am I doing? What is this about? What's the big A about in this piece? And then it can be so simple as just going back and looking at those basics, those 9 steps that we had earlier in the season. So it's very, very helpful. I'm really trying to break free of too much thinking. I don't know. Yeah. And maybe that's something that I need to really think about during the break, is that there's too much thinking, and I can't even name what it is when it comes to being afraid of the pieces that I've written. I had a moment like that last week, right before I wrote had the breakthrough that I was just talking about. I have so many ups and downs in just 1 week, but it was one of those mornings where I just woke up and every single thing that I was thinking about maybe opening, because I sort of wake up, we've talked about it before, I wake up early morning, Now we've got a dog, so take the dog out, get the coffee, and in that morning silence before the noise of the world comes, I just like that moment to start writing. But it was one of those mornings where it was just like, no, everything that I have, I'm really, really afraid of. And so that thinking, I really need to stop myself at some point and take the time to go, what is it that I'm afraid of? Maybe that's something that I need to do that'll really help me move forward. Because right now, if you asked me like, how did you get this piece published or that piece published or that piece published? I'll have 3 different answers for you. You know, for every single thing that I put out there, some of them have been like, oh yeah, this was a first draft. I can't believe it. Some of them are like, oh, well, you know, this one just took the ground and pound. I just had to really hammer this one out. And other ones are sort of like, I think this is done. And then, you know, we've talked about that. That was that piece that was included in Best Small Fictions for this year. So I really would love moving forward I feel comfortable. I love the voice that I'm coming up with. I feel very, very good about it. I just want to know why my hangups are the hangups. So next season, we're going to have me on the couch and you just sitting across from me, and I'll tell you all about my mother.
That's right.
And that's going to be all of season 6.
That's right. Tell me about your childhood. Yeah. No, what's funny though, Tim, is that a lot of what you're saying, I think we addressed, or at least started to address, in one of the refills from this season, which was about how to write a short story. You know, one of our listeners had asked us to kind of give a 30,000 foot, like, how do I do this work? You know, for somebody who's new to it. And the first step in that process is start. And it's a tongue in cheek, but like that's true. And so I wonder if the times when you feel, paralyzed is too strong a word, but impaired or hindered, or uncertain or unsure, you know, just diving in and starting the way that you would in an improv scene, the way that you would if you weren't kind of thinking it to death. Just starting is how you get something that you can then revise. Or in your case, sometimes you just have something that spills out, you know, pretty darn good, and you can do a little tinkering and then submit it and get it published. So yeah, the starting seems to be the most important thing. And I intellectually recognize that for me, but because I have so many competing priorities, I've consciously decided to set that aside and say, you got to get this other stuff done first, Art, before you can really start writing fiction. And that's okay. I think I would have beaten myself up in season 4, 3, 2, 1. Woohoo! I would have beaten myself up at all of those turns for, you know, why are you doing this when you could be writing fiction? And I came to terms with that, you know, a few episodes ago, where it really was, hey, I've got a gig that has deadlines and people are counting on me. So I'm going to do that one first while I have it. Because I'm not going to have it forever. Like, while I have it, I'm going to do that. And then the other thing I do with the board gaming, it is also impermanent. And there's a deadline coming up. There's a big event in Ohio coming up in August. And I wanted to make sure that the things that I wanted done were done in time for that. And so I prioritized that over everything else. And what's really nice about the hiatus that we're going on is that that's really my time to have the coffee in the morning and start to daydream and start writing, because I'll have the time, you know, like my wife always says, sleep when the baby sleeps. So if you've got, like, I'm not going to be working on the show when we're not doing the show. Although Tim, I'm really, really pleased. This season we had 5 excellent guests on the show.
Oh man.
We had Bethany back on the show. She did a refill for us. We met Emily Rinkeman. Now you had already known her from the workshop. I got to meet her. She's fantastic. Kat came back on the show, Kat Hammonds, and did an episode in the corner booth with us, which was great. And then we got to meet Nick Peck and Megan Michelle, which was a great conversation. So I feel really good about the people that we're bringing into the corner booth, the kinds of conversations, the quality of those conversations. And I think we'll probably continue to do that in future seasons.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I'm really happy to hopefully bring some folks back. It was really great to hear from Kat Hammonds again. Emily Rinkema is just one of my favorite writers. She has a new piece out, a recent piece out in Jake, which is really, really great. And Bethany Jarmal just had a Best of the Net nom for one of her pieces called Anxiety is a Bear. So I think we're living in some good company. I really, really like it, and I'm really looking forward to expanding that base because, some days I feel like Tim Goodwin, just got the imposter syndrome, wondering what's coming next, afraid to open stuff. But some days you feel like Nick Peck, and you're like, you know what? This is pretty easy for me. So
I gotta, yeah, that was insane. That the guy's like, yeah, well, the writing was pretty easy. I'm like, I've never heard that. Never. In his particular case, I wonder, just how close that story that he wanted to tell was to his own lived experience, and that he could sort of cobble together things that he was intimately aware of and then fictionalize it and sort of write it very effortlessly. I have experienced flow states. They're very small, but I have experienced that where I'm tapping into something that either happened to me or that I can very easily imagine if it did happen to me, and boom, it spills out. So yeah, I could only assume that, his story was very close to his lived experience, which might actually also have informed why he was so protective of that story and didn't want to kind of let other people drive that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what really feels nice about the folks that we've had on. I mean, Nick Peck went at it. Like, he went after it. I know that he has a journalism background. And again, I really think that helps because he has those techniques down. He knows the sort of, the rules and regulations of writing. Maybe that's the wrong term, but that kind of idea of like how writing is supposed to work. When you're a journalist, you just kind of know how stories have to work. You have to get them, how to work with editors, how to do those things, and making that shift into writing something. It's one of the classic stories. You write what you know, and for him to do that, that's why sometimes I just feel like, wow, you just talked about flow states yourself, Art, and it just feels like, wow, man, yeah. When I first opened up in the morning, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I just don't want to look at any of my pieces. I'm afraid of it. I want to be okay with those days, because there are going to be days where you're just like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I just rewrote an episode of ER and I didn't realize it. You're going to have those clunky days that don't work. And that's what I want to be more okay with, because I'm sort of this mindset that since I spent so much time not writing, I'm like, yeah, but I got to get all these ideas out. And I get stressed by that. And I think that affects the work in a negative way, instead of being able to look at it in that kind of, objective way without the stress. And so, yeah, that's something I'd like to get into. Be a little bit more confident in my own ability to have bad days.
Yeah, and you have
there are a lot more of those.
Exactly. I mean, but you have the perspective and the experience now to kind of weather that differently. Before, one bad day might have set you back a week or more, because then it allows all this doubt to creep in. Is this even something I'm capable of? If I miss leg day once, am I a failure? And the answer is no. You just missed leg day. So in this circumstance, because you've got so much experience in publication under your belt, that's one of the reasons that we pivoted, earlier in this season to why we want to write, because to have that North Star, to have that kind of central through line of this is why I'm even doing this work in the first place, that's going to carry you through those bad days. So I'm really glad that we touched on that this season as well. And, did you think about that? Do you have a why that you could sort of rattle off?
I think it's good to be asked constantly to know, because I feel like the answer is always going to change. I still love the fact that we were making some jokes about getting to that point where we're getting hot tubs, where everything's about the hot tub at the end of the day. And, when I was talking before about this and saying, I love Beastie Boys, and I love that they sort of showed the stuff that they liked, the music that they were fans of, and sort of repackaged that as their own music. And so I really like that as well. But I sort of like writing things that I think are cool. I know that sometimes you meet artists and they're just like, oh, I'm doing this for me because I like doing what I like. And I'm getting more comfortable with that, finding my voice and knowing the exact words that I want to put down on paper. That is such a fun game to play. That's kind of like, that's my answer this week. I like writing. Why am I writing? I'm writing because I want to have my voice. I want to be able to translate what's inside my head directly onto paper for other people to see what a weirdo I am.
I love that. I love that. That is a great reason. Seriously, it's a great reason to do it. Because, you got the one story about the guy who is basically a skinless skull, and he is attaching erasers to his face to like create the contour and the texture of an actual face. And I'm like, that is freaky, but really cool. Like, who else would have thought of that? And that they fired up the laser. It's a great story that has a wonderful turn right at the end that really kind of turns into, it gets, because it's kind of fanciful at first and almost cartoonish, like comic bookish, and you can kind of get into it, enjoy the romp, and then it makes this kind of hard left turn right at the end that reminds you that this is a real person with feelings, and you're like, oh man. And so I really like that. A lot of what you're doing is excellent, and so I want you to do more of it. So if you've identified that you want to do it for that reason, then yes, keep doing it.
Yeah, it feels nice to be able to tune into what I enjoy writing. When I was doing that piece, and I said that I had been hit by a prompt while I was in the middle of the piece. I know that sounds difficult to explain, but it's still a work in progress, so I don't really want to talk about it. But something that hit me as a prompt while I was trying to work at this piece turned it into something that was fun, because I was like, this doesn't really feel like it's just a normal, boring story. And that's the stuff that really gets me excited, is when I find something like I just wrote, I whipped out a piece, something had been rolling around in my mind. I sat down and I caught the inspo, which means I had a giant iced coffee, and I just tore out 1,000 words of a piece about my experience in the 1999 Regional Bartender Championship. And I was taking turns. I was laughing while I wrote it. I was having a great time. And I was like, this is the kind of stuff that I really like to write. This is what's getting me excited. It's not, because I don't know if we've talked about this a lot, but when I was in the first time I ever took a creative writing class was in high school. And I might have told you this, but I was the only student in there that was coming from a very, very silly place. There were folks in there, and it's high school, and there's a lot of stuff going on for folks in high school. And the other folks that were in this class were reading pieces that were just so, they were high school students dealing with trauma in their lives. And then they'd get to me and I'd read my piece that was like, Indiana Jones and Han Solo have just gotten a Pepsi machine so that Han Solo can pay off Jabba the Hutt with all of the profits from the Pepsi machine. Like, just ridiculously stupid stuff. And I feel like, looking back on that class, I always felt a little bit bad about it, because I was like, these people are just sharing trauma and I'm just sort of making jokes. And then someone said, well, you kind of need to have that balance. And that might be, that was probably good for the class to laugh. At least I perceived that they laughed at that stupid stuff. But that I just want to be more comfortable with the stuff that I like. Ray Bradbury talks about, like, I think it was in the Zen and the Art of Writing, this idea that, he has his stuff that he likes to play with, like dinosaurs and science fiction and stuff. And if somebody comes into the room and doesn't like what he's doing, he just picks up his toys and leaves, So having that confidence and that swagger to do the things that I like, that's what I just really want to get more into.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, for me, the reason I've been writing lately is because I am employed to do so. So it's really easy for me to get up the courage to do it. And I enjoy what I'm doing. But for the stuff that I'm not doing for other people, the things I'm doing for myself, I realized recently that it is discovery is the reason I'm doing it. That's kind of my new why, is to discover what's out there. And I saw a video that I wanted to point out to you. It's this guy in Amsterdam who throws a high-powered magnet into the river and pulls out bicycles. And it's just like an endless supply of bicycles that have fallen into this river. And sometimes he'll get a street sign and sometimes he'll get a hubcap, but mostly it's bicycles, so, but like, okay, I'm going to take a high-powered magnet and throw it into the river and let's see what comes out. And I think that would have been antithetical to my process 25 years ago, 30 years ago, because I thought I had to know what was in the river before I pulled it out. So now it's like, well, let's go fishing. Like, what's in the river? And then whatever comes
Yeah.
out might be worthwhile. It might be junk, but I'm going to go fishing. So I'm really excited to do more of that because I think it's healthy for me because they don't all have to be bangers, right? They don't have to be winners.
Right.
But you're going to find something cool is going to come out of that at some point. You just have to be disciplined enough. And when I say you, I mean me. I just have to be disciplined enough to continue to throw the magnet into the river. And eventually something really cool will come out. So when we're on hiatus and when I am done with, the gig that I've got, I think I'm going to rededicate myself to that because just kind of bouncing around when I'm walking the dog and I'm not really thinking about anything, these ideas will kind of assault me and I'll have to put them into my notes app and whatnot. Like the ideas are flowing. So I know that my brain is ready to do this work. And it's really just about carving out enough time. And I feel like a heel for saying like, well, I don't have enough time. Because we can all say that. We can all use that excuse. It's true for me, though. I actually do not have the time. But I think once we're on hiatus and the football thing's over, then I will have enough time, even with the competing priorities. So I'm really excited to come out of the hiatus into season 6 with something new for you to read.
Yeah. All right. One of the things that I just heard recently, and it's from an author, her name is Linda Bailey. I met Linda Bailey. She was in a Smoke Long workshop and she was talking about how she had done all of the prompts for Smoke Long Summer. And that is a beast. It's a beast. It's a lot of productivity. There were like 3 prompts a week, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I can't even remember, but it's a ton of prompts and she did them all. And so we were all sort of sitting there being like, how did you do that? And she talked about sacrifice. And that's the thing that I've been thinking about ever since she said that. Coming home from work, I just want to veg and I just want to watch television and I love watching movies. I love watching movies. Like I just rewatched Grosse Point Blank. I finally saw Repo Man. I saw Trainspotting after everybody said I had to see it only 30 years after it came out. You can skip it if you haven't seen it. But what Linda Bailey talked about was when she was doing all of these prompts, she made a sacrifice. She was like, she sacrificed, I think she was talking about her and her partner. They watch like 2 episodes of television a night. And she cut out one of those episodes so she could focus on writing for these prompts. And it was like, oh yeah, I want to live the lifestyle that I always live, where I get to do this, and this, but also tag writing in the middle of that. And I think that that's something that I really need to evaluate, especially because I am a full-time sort of salary employee person with, you do the 8 hours a day, but you also have to tack on 2 hours of transit time and all that. And so sacrifice, that's something to think about as well. Moving forward, can I make a sacrifice somewhere? Do I try to sacrifice another hour of sleep to get up even earlier? Nick Peck was talking about, I think I made the joke, it was the Anthony Bourdain way, where he just woke up an hour earlier and started writing his novel in that early morning hour because it's done, it's out of the way. And if you consistently do that, by the end of, a month, 2 months, 3 months, however many months, you've got a novel to go on. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm sacrificing enough to be a full-time author to get more of my voice out.
Yeah, same. 1,000% agree. And, with too many competing priorities, you can stretch yourself too thin. And that's where the motivating power of guilt can actually undermine what you're trying to accomplish. Because if I just say, well, I can have it all, I can be, bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan and do all the things. Like, no, at some point you are stretched too thin. And, and that's different. That is a different point for everyone. And so I think having that understanding of yourself, what can I carry and what can I not carry? It's a lot like lifting weights. When you lift weights, you're not lifting weights that are comfortable. You're lifting weights that strain your muscles, and you're doing it on purpose so that you can get bigger muscles or get more toned muscles, depending. But like the amount of weight you're carrying is purposeful. So, but at a certain point, if you try to put too much weight on the barbell, you will injure yourself. We translate that into writing. If I try to do too many competing priorities, perhaps I'm going to do none of them well, and that might jeopardize relationships, careers, quality of writing, or all of the above, right? So it really is having that why front and center that we talked about, a few episodes ago, and understanding and being able to articulate why you're doing this work helps you really to prioritize all the different competing factors that are vying for your attention. And what you've said here sounds to me like if you want to sacrifice more, it just means that you're going to rearrange the priorities. So instead of in the example that you mentioned, the 2 episodes of television a night, they went down to 1 so that they could create or move the writing into a higher priority slot. I think that's exactly the right thing to do. And what I've been saying is that I really can't reprioritize right now because I have commitments and deadlines and people are counting on me to do X, Y, and Z. Those have to come first. And if the writing, the personal fiction writing doesn't get slotted high enough, then it doesn't get done. And I used to crush myself for that and feel really bad about myself. And now I don't.
Yeah.
I wish that I had a little more time in the day. And I might actually start to approach things the way that you had mentioned Nick Peck had said by just starting out early. When I was a younger guy, and remember, he's 24. So when I was his age, I would do the same thing. Like I would just start the day earlier and get after it and have 4 cups of coffee in the day and just knock it out. I am not able to do that anymore. So it is, again, I don't want to injure myself by putting too much weight on the barbell, but I'm excited to, kind of get things off my plate so that I can make room for the writing, get it into the prioritization so I can actually try it and then give you some new stuff to read. So I'm jazzed about it.